Hello and welcome to The Voice of Business, the official podcast of the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, presented by Gwinnett Magazine. I'm your host, Nick Messino, the President and CEO of the Gwinnett Chamber, and we are broadcasting from the Gas South Convention Center in Duluth, Georgia. At the Gwinnett Chamber, our mission is to champion business, and by serving over 2,000 members, we have become the leading advocate and innovative resource for businesses to connect and thrive. Lanier and Tami, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to be here with two of my favorite people. We are celebrating this month, Black History Month, and celebrating Black business leaders. And we are really happy that you both agreed to join us. We had a great 2024 together at the Gwinnett Chamber. We had great leadership. Lanier, thank you for your incredible leadership as our chair.
Thank you.
And we're excited about 2025. And this is our first podcast of the year. So it's really exciting to be with you, both of you today. Let's start off. Tami, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Tami Wilder. I am the co-CEO of Positive Impact International and Gwinnett County Safe Place. I'm English, if you didn't know.
It was interesting. I could not pick it up. I couldn't tell if that
Incredibly
was
southern.
New Jersey.
I actually thought she was from South Georgia.
It can be a little bit confusing sometimes. I've lived in America for a while. I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy working in the nonprofit space. I'm also a mother. I've got 4 beautiful children. What else do you want to know about me?
You have been in Gwinnett for a long time.
I have, yeah.
And how long has it been?
22 years.
Okay. Wow. It's longer than I thought. I had seen you for years. We had met, then we got reconnected. And you joined the Gwinnett Chamber Board?
Yeah, I've been a member for about 10 years. And then, this year's been like the come up.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be a part of this. It's
awesome.
wicked. Yeah.
Mr. Levett.
Yes.
One of the greatest chairs in the Gwinnett Chamber's history.
I appreciate that. Had a lot of fun doing it. Lanier Levett with Gregory Levett and Sons Funeral Home, family-owned and operated business. We started our journey back in 1980. I'm a 4th-generation funeral director in my family, a 3rd-generation funeral home owner. My great-grandfather started a business in Conyers, which is home for me, back in 1950. And then so we, matured into the business. My father started Gregory Levett and Sons Funeral Home in 1980 in Scottsdale, Georgia, which is just a small suburb in Decatur. And from there, we expanded. We have a total of 7 locations all throughout Atlanta at this juncture. And it has been a great journey. Immediate past chair of the best chamber this side of heaven. I had the great privilege of serving in that capacity for this past year, and it was an amazing journey.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, and we appreciate your leadership. Thank you both for being with us. And so we've got some questions that we want to chat about, and this is going to be very conversational. So let's start off with, can you share a pivotal moment in your career that shaped you as a leader? And Tami, I'd love to hear from you first.
Yeah, I think that for me, it'd be 2 things, right? So growing up, I always was doing service projects. Like my parents would have me. I remember I had said to my parents when I was living in England, I'm like, I want to go to Jamaica just because I just love the culture. And they were like, okay, you can go, but you have to serve in an orphanage for 2 weeks. That was the deal. And then I got like 3 days to have fun. So I was like, okay. And I remember sitting in this orphanage and there would be about maybe 100 kids under 3 years old and maybe 3 workers. And they were understaffed, right? So our job was just to go sit there, rock these babies, feed them, change them. And I remember sitting there holding this one baby and thinking, I don't know what it is exactly I'm going to do, but it's going to be with children and it's going to be with serving kids. Fast forward, I knew that I wanted to work with underserved children and families. I wanted to figure out where the gaps were, right? And so I think that I just knew that I wanted to do something that was going to be impactful and make a difference. And then I would say the other part of it is the past couple of years, I had that moment where I'm like, I think I've really figured out what my ta-da moment is, and it was to work collaboratively with other people and to unite, whether it be businesses, whether it be non-profits, because I, through my journey, have figured out that I can't do this by myself, right? Our community is so huge, the needs are so huge, and we've got to do it together. We've got to figure out ways that we can all work together from other angles, and we can be more impactful that way. So I would say that was like my changing moment.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We can go further together.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
And it's nice when you realize that.
Yeah.
And there gets to a point in your career where you're driving and I can do this. And then you just realize I can collaborate.
Yeah.
And so much more can come out of it.
We can just be so much more impactful, right?
I am very impressed watching you and other nonprofit leaders collaborate. It happens all the time. It's really cool. And I've never seen a group of people work together that are not in competition with each other.
Yeah.
It's really awesome to see.
Thank you. And it's something that I think we have to be intentional about that, right? Because even in the nonprofit world, when you're applying for grants, you're naturally pinned against each other. It's like, I want that funding, I need it. But then it's like, hold on a second, if we work together and we add the amount of clients that we are serving, right, the people that we're serving, and we apply for funding together, we show that we have greater impact, actually we have more chance of being impactful. And so we have to be the ones to make that change, right? So, yeah.
That's awesome. Lanier.
If I could just piggyback off of her just for one quick moment, the journey with me sharing or serving in the capacity of chair of the Gwinnett Chamber Board, oftentimes we don't have a certain appreciation about some organizations. We don't have the information about them, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work that Tami and her organization is doing and other nonprofits are doing, because if it doesn't impact us personally, we don't understand the true value to that. Yeah. So I appreciate the services that you and the other nonprofits are doing. For me, when we started expanding our business, we started in 1980, as I mentioned, and then in 1999, I got out of funeral business completely, and a lot of people don't know this. I decided I wanted to discover the person that I am outside of being in the funeral industry, and so I decided to get into the car business. I went and worked at Hennessy Cadillac over in Duluth, and I was one of the salespeople that opened up that dealership with Mark Hennessy and the team that was there. I learned so much, probably one of the best decisions I ever made, because it gave me the ability to use what I learned in my previous life at that time and apply that into that industry, and I did quite well with it. Fast forward, in 2003, my dad, our family was thinking about expanding into our second location, and he said, I don't want to do it without you. Would you come back to the business? And that's when we opened up our second location, which is Indicator, which is what we now consider our flagship location. It's our largest location in terms of volume. So I gave my resignation to Hennessy Cadillac, got back into our funeral business, and we started to grow then. But to answer your question directly, I think the pivotal moment for me was when we expanded our business into Gwinnett County. Well, why Gwinnett County? Because we saw lots of opportunities here in Gwinnett County to serve families that we felt like needed another choice. And so we decided to come to Gwinnett County. But the most critical point, I feel, is when I got accepted into Leadership Gwinnett. And the reason why I give Leadership Gwinnett so much credit is because it opened so many doors
100%.
For me and my business here in Gwinnett County. After graduating through that program, I was able to be recognized. I was able to sit on many, many boards. And because of that, that further expanded my ability to move around the county. We knew nothing about Gwinnett County. We just said, hey, there's an opportunity for another funeral home in Gwinnett County. And so we explored it. We did a little bit of research, and hence later we built a place from the ground up in Lawrenceville. But Leadership Gwinnett, I think, opened so many doors for me and gave me that opportunity to become the leader that I've become now.
Lanier, the important question, follow-up, was that the greatest class ever? That's
the greatest class ever, class of 2011. As a matter of fact, the amazing CEO for the Gwinnett Chamber, Mr. Nick Messino himself, he and I were classmates.
That's right. We were in the same class.
So,
right.
yeah. We were.
Well, fantastic.
Yes.
And Leadership Gwinnett is great.
100%. I'm in class now.
I wasn't sure you were
so I mean,
just
I'll let you lot have your moment, but
You're
I mean,
the
really,
future.
we are the future best class that there will be.
Everyone loves that debate.
I know, right?
I think all classes say the same thing.
Well, thank you both for sharing that. Love the story. I love that your parents had you go volunteer.
Yes.
Before you play, you got to volunteer.
Gotta serve.
And in doing so, which you were probably not the most excited about, because you wanted to go play in Jamaica.
100%.
And it sparked something in you that is.
It did. It changed my life in a way that, like, I don't think any of us knew that it was going to affect me the way it did. Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, thank you for sharing. Well, we all have gotten to a point in our career, and you don't do it without having challenges. So, Lanier, we'll start with you this time. Would you share, as a leader, some business challenges that you've experienced?
Sure. So a few things that I look at is you've got to stay humble while staying confident. know what you're doing and know how to do it and know how to treat people. And I strongly believe that dealing with anxiety and stress, because of my industry, I'm dealing with people at a most difficult time in their lives. And so we have to deal with all types of personalities, all types of moods, because at that time, it's a very difficult and challenging time for a lot of families. Keeping yourself and your team motivated, I think, is really important. I think I have the ability to rally people together to try to keep high morale within my organization, so we can be a better servant to the people that we're serving. Continue to develop your own skills as a leader. I'm never shy about continuing to learn more about what it is that I want to do so I can be a better servant to the people that I'm serving. And not just in my industry, but as a leader in the community for whatever type of organization it is that you are part of. Dealing with conflict. We deal with conflict all the time, right? Whether it is within your organization or within an organization that you're serving in a leadership role, you've got to be able to identify what that problem may be and then bring resolution to it. And then communicate well. We want to be able to communicate and be very effective in communicating.
Which is not easy.
It is not easy at all.
And to be good at all those things, you said one thing, which is you've got to continuously learn.
Yes. Continuously
sharpen the saw. Because the way we communicated in the 80s is different in the 90s.
It is.
It's different in the early 2000s. It just keeps, and if you just become stagnant, because I figured this out.
Right.
You got to continue to grow. So those were all great points. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I could relate to a lot of the things that you were saying, Lanier. I think with me, some of the unique challenges, one, I think it would be being a woman leader, right? Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I've got to, where I don't feel like I should have to be loud in a room, I have to be a little bit louder. I think that, dealing with people, I serve people, right? I serve children. And I think that being able to navigate different personalities when people are in crisis, right? Knowing like, how do I put my feelings to the side and really deal with the initial crisis? I also think that one of the challenges that I've learned, I would say, as we've grown over the past 3 years, we've gotten pretty big with our shelter. We're, with the emergency children's shelter. So being able to make sure that the people that I have in place, my team, that I am being the type of leader that is giving them what they need so that they can be what our children need. And I, went to a whole bunch of different conferences this past year, and the theme of the conference would be how to run your organization better. But really, if I really listened, it really started with me. And everything comes back to the leader. We are the reflection, right, of our whole organization. So a lot of times I had to sit there and not look at what my team might be doing wrong or where we as an organization failed. It would be, no, what did I do wrong? Right. What can I do better? And I think that me trying to take that approach helped me tackle some of the challenges a little differently, because I was always constantly having to look at myself first. And so I think that's one of the unique challenges that I found in being a leader.
That's really a very nice retrospective thing to be sharing, because as a leader, it's a people business. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's people. Mm-hmm. And they're executing the plan and the strategy, and they're looking for guidance. And I've just done something. Was this done properly? They're constantly looking at the leader. 100%. And you want to be humble, and you're like, no, it's not about me. Yeah. But the reality is someone has to drive the ship. There's the captain of the ship, the captain of the plane. Yeah. You've got to lead. And the quicker you figure that out, and you don't have all the answers, and don't pretend, because everyone that works for you knows you don't have all the answers. Right. Be honest when you don't know. Yeah. And so, great advice. Yeah. Really apprite you sharing.
It's a big lesson for me.
Well, and it never ends.
Yeah, no, it really
I'm just going to take a
doesn't,
stab at this, but I think Lanier and I might be older than you.
Slightly.
And our great older wisdom, you never stop sharpening the saw.
No,
you
cannot.
Yeah.
And I would say at the time where you feel like you're done, you probably need to find a successor. Yeah. Because you constantly grow.
And I think another thing for me was also remembering what my mission was. Because I think that it's so easy to be knocked off track, right? To be distracted. And I always had to come back to like, what am I doing this for? Like, what is the mission? What's my goal? And that way it would help me navigate different conversations, be in rooms that maybe I was really uncomfortable being in. But I had to come back to why are you here? What are you doing? And I know for my organization, it was more awareness, right? I can't ask people to support us if they don't know what they're supporting.
Right.
And I've got to be able to translate the message of like what the needs are in our community so that I can get the results, right, that I'm needing. And so those are some of the things that I've had to learn, like, okay, come back to the start. You know, I might not have it all right the first time, but I can make mistakes and we start again. You know, as long as we finish strong, that's all that matters, right?
Right. And you just keep trying.
Yeah,
right.
Just keep trying.
Try not to repeat the same mistakes.
100%.
That's some advice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, we are here in the coming month celebrating Black History Month, and I'd like for both of you to share. Tami, we can start with you this time. If you could share with you, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to your business? And just your thoughts.
Yeah. I really love this question because I said in the beginning, like, I'm British, right? So I think being Black in England is very different. Being Black in America is very different. Being a Black woman in America is also very different, right? And then being a Black business leader there's a lot of different levels to this. A lot of tears. But when I read this question, and I just thought for a second, and the first word that came to my mind was resilience. And I think that Black history, Black business, there's a like a resounding sound of like resilience. We have to be resilient. We get a lot of no's. A lot of people get no's, but sometimes I feel like we get a few more no's than others, right? Having to have that pressure of having to be excellent, right? Like not like, and we should all want to be excellent. We should all want to be our best, but sometimes it's like the expectation of having to be a little bit better because we have got to prove. We've got a bit more to prove sometimes. It shouldn't be that way, but you know. I think that one of the things that I love about Black history is I've learned a lot about just some of the great inventions and the people that were behind some of the most amazing things that we use every day, right? And in England, they definitely really didn't talk about who was behind it. And so being in this country, the fact that there is a month dedicated to Black history. And for me, I've learned a lot, even though I'm Black, I've learned a lot about the history of our people and the great things that have happened. And then I think in terms for my business, for the kids that we serve, it's so important that we are constantly showing them not only historical people of color that have done amazing things, but people today. So I love it when I can introduce the kids to Lanier, to introduce the kids to different business owners that are my friends, are Black. And I can say to a lot of the kids in my shelters are minorities, and I can say to them, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. Everybody has struggles, right? But for them to be able to see someone that looks like them and to be like, wow, they run this business, that business. And, you know, I think it's inspiring. I think we've got to do more of this, right? Like, I just think Black history, I feel inspired, I feel motivated, and I feel like we can always focus on what we don't have, and we can focus on some of the injustice, but then we can focus on the greatness, right? And so I feel all
You
that.
can't forget about either.
Yeah.
And you need to...
It's the balance, right?
It's a balance,
It's the balance, yeah.
If you focus on one or the other and not a balance, you're going to get off balance.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to visit the Black History Museum on the Oval in D.C.?
In D.C., no, I haven't, but I've
Lanier,
heard
have
a
you?
lot about
I
it.
have not. My brother and a few other folks in my family have had an opportunity to visit it, and it is a must-go-to place to visit, from what I've been told.
That's what I've been told, yeah. And it's funny because, you know, when I think about what I do, I'm for the people, meaning any people, right? Anyone who is underserved, any injustice, I don't care who you are, what color you are, I'm for you, right? And I think that when I look at some of the greats that were doing what I'm trying to do, right? Speak up for the people that can't speak for themselves, right? And I look at the adversity, then you're not going to be the most liked person. You're not going to be the most popular person. Sometimes you say some things that are going to rub some people the wrong way. But I feel inspired, right? That like, you got to go through the trenches sometimes for great things to happen. And we've got so many wonderful examples of people that, you know, took a chance and stepped out and said, you know what, no one else is speaking about this, but I'm going to. And I'm going to make sure that ways are being made possible for all people, right? And so, yeah, I get really excited about this because I just feel like, yes, this is how it should be, right? So I love it.
feel like Tami's been walking around in my mind because all of the highlights that she just mentioned were things that I wanted to talk about as it relates to Black History Month. Resilience.
Yeah.
Can't talk enough about that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to work twice as hard to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
And then just the systemic oppressions that we as Black folks have experienced has always been negatively affected us. But for me, in business and how it has shaped me as a business owner, as a community leader, is that I want to be judged by the work that I do and not by the color of my skin.
Yes.
And so I want to be called upon because I'm good at the job, regardless of what the job is. If it's serving as the chairman of the board or running my organization. You know, I came to Gwinnett County, opened up our funeral home, not because we were a Black family that wanted to do Black business in Gwinnett, but because we were a good business that wanted to do business in Gwinnett. And so, but we had to work twice as hard to make that happen. And so, as a business leader and as a business owner, I'm very proud of what we've been able to do and what our ancestors created for us to pave that path for us to be successful.
I love that.
Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to get right back to this. We're going to take a break. We're going to hear from our great partners at Gwinnett Magazine.
Hey guys, I'm David Greer, and I'm the publisher of The Guide to Gwinnett, and we are so excited this year to be working with the Chamber to produce what we think is going to be the biggest, best, most comprehensive guide to Gwinnett ever. Going to be a lot of pages in there that tout the Chamber's services and basically just a pro-business cheer for all you guys out there working day to day, making Gwinnett what it is. So I invite all of you to step up and advertise. We've got some special deals for Chamber members, exclusive deals, special discounts. Call on us if we can help you. Look forward to having you in this year's Guide to Gwinnett.
Welcome back. Thank you for that brief break, hearing from our great friend David at Gwinnett Magazine. Let's continue talking about what we were just talking about. And you both shared you were very familiar with, but had not visited the Black History Museum. I actually had the benefit of visiting it for the second time last month. And the first time, and I'll just explain to you physically, it is a beautiful building right on the Oval, right adjacent to the Washington Monument, right across the street from the also brand new World War II monument. And it's 3 floors below ground and then 3 floors above ground. Wow. And if you want to do it kind of in chronological order, you start at the bottom. Well, on one of our Washington, D.C. fly-ins a couple years ago, a group of us went over. And it's hard to do together because you're going to go at your own pace and read. Right. And I'm so glad that I went. I was like, well, I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm a linear person. Let me start at the bottom. Well, it starts with the history, the Black history of the United States, and you can imagine where that starts. Sure. Right. And I'm glad because I couldn't get through the first set of panels without crying. And I didn't want to cry in front of other people anyway. I was trying to be a tough guy. It was a tough experience. Sure. And so I did the whole first floor, and then I got up to the second floor, and we ran out of time. It was probably the Jim Crow laws was the second floor. Well, the next time I went, which was a month ago, they had an exhibit that was kind of global Black history and oppression. And so I went and experienced that. But then I went up, which was, I'm sure it was designed this way. I didn't read anything, but it seems like it got more uplifting as you went on. And then there was different sections based on the experience of Black people in the U.S. military. And like this walls of people that won all these service awards. Sure. And then there was a sports one, which is these are the places where Black Americans had the first big impact, winning the Medal of Honors in World War I and World War II. And then some of the greatest sports legends in the United States. So I go into the sports section, and there's one of the greatest Ohio States, and arguably one of the world's greatest athletes ever, the one and only Jesse Owens, who was an Ohio State alum, who embarrassed the Nazi Germany. Yes. I think it was the 1936 Olympics. Yep. In Berlin. Yep. And literally there's like 2 statues of athletes, and there's one is Jesse Owens.
Wow. An amazing story.
It's an incredible story. There's been 2 great recent movies about him. But then the rest of the story is not so great because he comes back to America, who the whole world knows his name, and he has trouble. He's not accepted, right? Especially in the South, right? But not a lot of places up north either. Yeah. And so that story needs to be told, right? Yeah. But there's the whole section on business leaders. I mean, it really, in the future, you two might be in there. And you got your start right here at Gwinnett Chamber Podcast.
If I could just touch on that just for a quick moment. If you all have not seen the movie 6888,
Oh my God, it's amazing.
that movie
It is
is
amazing.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It's a film
It
by
was-
Tyler Perry,
yeah.
and it's based on a true story about Black women in the military. And
Oh, is it? It's out right now.
It's out right now.
Oh, it's on
yeah.
Netflix.
It's on
Yeah,
Netflix.
it's on
Yeah,
Netflix.
okay.
Yeah.
If you don't see anything else, you have got to see that movie.
It's been in the #1
Yes.
list
Yes.
for
is
like 2 weeks.
But I mean,
fantastic.
it is an amazing story, and it could not have come out at a better time leading into Black History Month.
Yeah.
And talk about a proud
Yeah.
moment on, how the military or the upper leadership in military did not think they could get this job done in getting the mail out to these soldiers, right?
yeah.
And because a lot of the families of these soldiers did not know if they were still alive
Where
or
they
where
were
they
located,
were,
yeah.
or if they were injured or whatever. And so there were millions and millions and millions of pieces of mail that had not been delivered.
Yeah.
And so these Black female soldiers were able to get it done. I mean, and that's just a
I mean,
synopsis
talk
of the
about
story.
resilience, right?
Resilience,
Like that's
yes.
one of the things
Yes.
that because the head of the army or the group that
Yeah,
she
Kerry
was
Washington.
leading, the character that Kerry Washington was playing, like she was constantly faced with adversity.
Yes.
And not only because she was Black, she was a woman. So all of the people that were her superiors were men. And so the way they spoke to her, and she had to sit there in front of her whole team that she was leading and
Yeah.
be humble.
And be humble.
Talk
about humble.
And take it, but
Yep.
still lead her team with strength. And, it was amazing.
And another thing too is that she was highly educated.
She was highly,
And so she was an officer in the military at this time, and she was probably more educated than most of the white counterparts.
Yeah.
But because she was Black and she was a female, and what we know today as a double minority, I mean, she was just phenomenal. I don't want to tell the story, but it is an
It's
amazing
amazing.
movie.
Yeah.
You've got to see it. So that just kind of brings it back home for this whole conversation here.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen the movie yet, but do you remember the movie that came out a few years ago about getting I think it was the man on the moon, and they had the mathematical equations, and there was these women.
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
But it's
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
a
same
similar-
type of
yeah.
vibe. It's
Yeah.
the same,
It
yeah.
gives you the same feeling.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
movie came out, I guess, 5 or 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
A fantastic
Yeah,
movie.
It was
same
amazing.
vibe.
Yeah.
It sounded like you were describing that movie,
Yeah.
just a different
It's,
topic.
Yeah.
it's the same feel.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
the same feel.
first of all, it's just an exciting time to give everyone has an opportunity. When I grew up watching TV, it was all Leave It to Beaver,
Yeah.
right? And so now everybody can see themselves
Sure.
on TV,
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
in the movies, and it's really Tyler Perry. He's a rock star.
Yeah.
He is. This is by far, in my
One
opinion,
of his
the best
best.
movie he's
Yeah,
ever
100%.
made.
Okay.
It wasn't your typical Medea
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. It was, he
was
was
very classy.
phenomenal
Yeah.
in this movie.
Well, hey, let's transition and talk about, and you kind of, Tami, spoke a little bit about this, but allies and organizations, and as Black business leaders yourselves, leading a for-profit and non-for-profit, how do you use allies? You shared some examples where you allied with other, but just in general, what approaches have you used that you want to share with the audience?
Fundraising is always a big help. For example, and I say fundraising, when we first started with our business, we had a tough time raising capital to start our business. Number one, in 1980, when we were trying to start our business, the financial resources that we needed to start our business weren't quite there, and so we were turned down by multiple banks. I'll never forget it. My parents had to mortgage their home to borrow the money to go in business. They had a home where I think their payment was less than $200 a month, and had to mortgage the money to get a mortgage on their home to go in business. And their mortgage went from $200 a month to about $800 a month. And back then, that was a lot of time when there were a lot of unknowns. So I think fundraising or raising capital to start business is always important, particularly for a minority-owned business, or any business, but particularly a minority-owned business, because just the resources.
You're a well-known, multi-generation, well-established business. You're a Black business owner. Your father is a Black business owner.
Sure.
Today, if you want to go seek capital, would you have and I hope the answer is yes, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would you have a very different experience? Your dad had to bootstrap his business, your dad and mom.
So the short answer to that is not a problem. At our second location, which again is our flagship location, we're doing a $5 million renovation. We were able to close that loan in about 2.5 weeks. So things look a lot different for us now.
Good.
I think we've been good stewards of our finances, and so it makes that process a lot easier when we go to the bank. There's nothing we can't go to the bank and ask for, and
you probably had people coming after you to loan you money.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious about
sure. So, but it looks a lot different.
40 plus years difference.
Yeah. It looks a lot different now. But back then, things were a lot different. We did not have the history, and we were just starting out. And at that time, my parents were 30 years old, and trying to go in business for themselves was a challenge.
But they were experienced in the industry. It's not like they just decided.
So my history goes even deeper. My grandfather started his business in 1950 in Conyers, and so my dad worked for him. My dad always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but never went in business until 1980. But pre-1980, my father was the first black store manager for Kroger in all of Kroger's history.
Wow.
So he was a store manager in Kroger from the late 60s into the very, very early 70s. And the last store that he managed was the Kroger store on Cascade Road in Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta. And he was there until he got robbed. Was armed robbed at that store, and he quit. So from that point, he decided to go. He was working at his father's funeral home part-time, but really weren't sure if he was going to make a career out of it. And so he went that route, decided he wanted to go back to school to get licensed in the event if he wanted to get into the business, he would at least have his credentials in place. Fast forward, in 76, my dad was offered a franchise for Radio Shack. So he was a Radio Shack franchisee.
Wow.
To go back to tell you from the initial few questions that we talked about, how as blacks, we weren't treated very fairly. He had a Radio Shack in Conyers, and at that time, the only black Radio Shack, I believe, in Radio Shack's history. The store did so well, the store was taken back from him and given to a white counterpart. Wow. And they lost that store, just a few years after that. So he had that store for about 2 or 3 years, and then he got into the insurance business. So he, and this kind of leads into, we're now approaching 1980 when he decided to open up his funeral home, but he worked for Independent Life, which was an insurance company, which is now American General.
Mm-hmm. So you're Dr. Levett, as I know him, he's a serial entrepreneur.
Right.
He's a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he worked for an insurance company for many years. And at that time, Tami, you may be too young to remember it, and Nick, I'm not sure if this was happening in Ohio when you were growing up, but this is when the insurance agent would come to your house.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And collect the payments.
The 3 people that would come into your living room.
That's right.
Right? The preacher.
Yep. The funeral director.
The funeral director.
And the insurance agent.
Right.
And so.
That's why we have living rooms.
That's right. That's right. And so that's what he did. And I'll share this 40-second story with you to kind of tell you how we transitioned. Is my mom had a girlfriend of whom she graduated high school with. She and her husband had given birth to a set of twins. Twins died at birth, and they asked my dad and my mom to bury them, and we did not have a funeral home. And so they did the service through my grandfather's funeral home, and there were probably about 250 people that attended those twins' funeral service. And so that was kind of the light that went off into my parents' head and said, hey, if we can do it for them, I think this is a way for us to make a living. Wow. And so my dad told my mom, he said, and at this time, my mom worked at a grocery store, and she was a meat wrapper back in the back. And he said, if you can give me 5 more years on that job, I'll sit you down. And so my mom stopped working in 1985, and then from that point, they really start pounding to grow our business. So I know that was a lot to get to this point, but it just shows that I was saying that to get to this point where they had to work twice as hard to get to where we are, and we've been able to just expand from that point.
Well, thank you for sharing
amazing,
all that.
yeah.
I felt like I knew you pretty well, but
Yeah.
that's some pretty good
It's
stuff.
that's like some
history.
deep history right
Yeah,
there,
family
right?
history.
Right?
Tami, circling back to you, allies. I
Yeah.
think you shared some great examples of what
Yeah.
you're doing today in your journey, thinking about it as a black business
Yeah.
nonprofit owner. What allies have helped you get you where you are today?
Yeah, I think that I've had some great allies, and things that they've done is celebrate each other. We've got to champion each other, right? So like we can always talk about, oh, this person needs something. But when your organization is doing great, having other business owners say, oh, I've got to tell you about what this business is doing, or what this business leader, that like they're making some impact, or you've got to meet this person. And I would say, an ally would be like Maureen Cronoa.
She's everyone's ally,
She
right?
literally is one of those that would be like, have you met Tami? Do you know what she's doing? This is how we're working together. And
that's how you and I got reconnected.
100%, right?
You
And
can't
so
avoid it. She's going to pull you over.
She's going to pull you
sit
over,
down.
and she's going to make sure. But I think that that's important that we all do that for each other, because I don't necessarily always think that it's an ally in the sense of like a white person being an ally for a black person. I think it's, we all have value, right? So then if I have a friend who's a business owner and they are whatever race and they're doing great, then I need to be like, have you met Lanier? Have you met Nick? Oh my God, do you know about this, right? We've got to champion each other. That is, I think, the best way to ally for each other. I also think that within our businesses, diversity, right? So when you look at your boards, when you look at even, like I've been to a few different events and the panels have not been diverse on either side, right? And sometimes I'm like, how are you truly relating to your audience or to whoever if you don't have representation of the audience, right? There's got to be a balance. I think that when decisions are being made and you're making a business decision that affects multiple people, different types of people, you've got to have that balance there, that you've got white, black, Asian, you've got whatever, right? So I think that those are ways that we can ally for each other and create that balance and equality and diversity naturally, but we have to be intentional about doing that, because it's so easy to stay in our comfort zones, right? So much easier sometimes, not for me, but for a lot of people, it's easier to talk to people that are just like them, right? But if we are intentional about making our spaces different and forcing ourselves to be a little uncomfortable, we'll actually learn that we are so much more alike, right? We can learn the amazing things about each other, but I also think that we also have to learn about each other's struggles, because how can I champion you if I don't know the struggles that you face? And because we're talking about Black history and just Black business, if you are friends with people that are minorities and, are having certain struggles, like what you just shared, Lanier, about just what your family went through with banks. And so if I was a owner of a bank or a VP of a bank, and I'm looking at, man, I wonder if there are more Black business owners that struggle with, what are we doing in our company to make it not be this hard? Because we are the change. You know what I'm saying? Like, we always look at, like, there are systems and stuff, but a lot of the times it takes a few of us to just stand up and say something and be like, this isn't right. Why is this so difficult? So I think that those are some of the great things that all of us can do, that I try to do, all the time. And, one thing that I want to share that I loved that the Chamber did, and I know this wasn't a Chamber event, but the Chamber supported, was when Lanier became the board chair. And, it was a little tricky when we were like, we're going to celebrate the first Black board chair of the Chamber, right? So I had friends who were like, well, I mean, do we celebrate every board chair like this and have private parties or whatever? And the thing was, the beautiful part was that there were more people that were like, this is amazing. Like, I didn't even know that this even was a thing, right? But it was such a beautiful event because you had so many different types of people come together that I just wish I could have captured the moment of that room, right? And you saw all different business leaders and everybody was supporting and celebrating something that hadn't happened before.
Tami, we're going to use this podcast. I'm going to share something because people like to talk about humility. He actually walks the walk.
He didn't want it.
He did not want it.
I know.
When him and I, over a year and a half ago, talked about, well, it was more than a year and a half ago, because you have to be the chair-elect for a year.
Right.
Neither one of us, we just knew each other. Our wives knew each other.
Yeah.
We socialized. And I didn't invite him to consider being chamber chair because he was Black. It was because it was Lanier.
Because he
and
is
a
who
successful
he is.
business leader.
100%.
And we then started getting pressure from other people. And I said, Lanier, I have to officially ask you, would you like us to be introduced in this role as the first Black chair of the Gwinnett Chamber? And he said, well, if the Chamber thinks that's important, I'll go along with it, but I'm not asking for
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And I said, well, I mean, I want to do what you want to do. And he's like, I want to do what you want to do. So then we agreed to do nothing. We just said, let's just do what we do. And
Yeah.
let's just follow the process.
Yeah.
But then the community didn't accept that.
Exactly.
And it was, I mean, that's the right history.
That's
But it was
exactly
perfect
Yeah.
because I remember Lanier and I had a conversation, and I'm like, we've got to celebrate this. This is bloody brilliant, right?
Yeah,
and it was like, but what was really cool was that I remember coming up to the chamber the past 6 years. I remember coming up to Chairman's Club about it, and I was one of the only ones that looked like me. And I remember I got some comments from people. How did you get in here? And I'd be like, the same way you did through that elevator. Like, but it was people were very comfortable, and it was like I looked around and I really didn't see many people. But I would say since with your leadership as well, with being intentional about diversity, all different races, right? What it has made other minorities feel comfortable, feeling like I can come to these places if I am where I'm supposed to be in business, right? If it's the right place for me to be, right, the right environment, I actually belong here because I see this person, I see this person. Oh, these people are doing business together, and it changed the culture. And I think that the year that Lanier has been chair, it has opened the doors for a lot of other people that didn't feel like they were welcome.
It's
to be
accelerated.
Like, 100%,
right?
because then they're like, this is possible.
Even on top of that, even with the event that we had with me becoming chair, I only wanted to do it under one exception. And I said I did not want to do it for me being the first black chair.
Yeah.
I wanted the community to see what the chamber is now all
100%.
about. And I think that was kind of the segue to help increase membership,
Yep.
whether it's general membership or chairman's
Yep.
club, because, and I'll be very transparent, the chamber now was not the chamber 10 or 12 years ago. It has gone through some significant changes to the good.
Yeah.
Because my first go around, and we've been a part of the chamber for many years, but I first joined the board, I think in 2011 or 12, and I served for 3 years, I believe. And even back then, it looks nothing like it does now. And I don't know if there were any other black board members on the board at that time. And Nick, I may be wrong, but if it wasn't, it was just
Lanier, if there was, it was one or two.
It was
Yeah.
Speckles,
I mean, I could name
Yeah.
people.
Right.
Because there were so few.
So we now fast forward, several years later, and I'm very proud to call myself a board member because of what it looks like, what it's doing, how impactful it has been in the community. And Nick, I know you're a very humble person, but a lot of that credit is due to you because I think you had an entirely different vision of what previous leadership here at the chamber has looked like. And so, I applaud you for that, and I've shared that with you many, many times. But it's through your leadership and the team that you have put together. And because I definitely want to give them credit as well, but it's because of your leadership and the team that you've been able to put together is why the chamber is now thriving.
Well, it's intentional.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that's the key, is that you've got to be intentional about things, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
But what you've done is you've placed people where they were supposed to be, different team members, you've put things in place. And so now when you look at our chamber, when you look at the different groups we're involved in, we actually are a reflection of our community. You see everybody. You know what I'm saying? You see everyone.
And I think that's how Gwinnett in general is now, because I can remember many years ago when I served on a few capacities for the school district, and our teachers and well, not necessarily teachers, but our administrators did not reflect the community in which we lived. And so that was in my ear a whole lot. And so I served on the Human Resource Advisory Council, and we were kind of the eyes and ears on what we hear in the community. And much credit to Mr. Wilbanks. He was very intentional about changing that. But I think the one person that spoke up about that was Dr. Richard Haynes, who pastors Salem Baptist Church over in Lilburn. And I remember very vividly sitting in a meeting and saying, Mr. Wilbanks, this is what needs to change. And so he was very intentional about making sure that, when you had these black boys in these schools and the only black men they saw in the school were the janitors, that's a problem. That's a problem because it's hard for that child to really look up to a janitor. And not saying anything's wrong with that, but they want to see somebody in a leadership role.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Wilbanks was very intentional about
It's
changing
important.
Those optics.
Be intentional, be consistent,
Well, thank you for your earlier accolades. Thank you for sharing your impact of the school system, and it doesn't go unnoticed. I did want to just respond to one thing.
Sure.
The work that we did in the last 5 years at the Chamber, you need someone to lead it, and I was happy to be a part of that. I'm glad you mentioned the team. All of our staff has been involved in that as part of that. But I've had people mentor and coach me, you being one of them, Lanier, Demetrius Jordan, Fred Dawkins. I could practice and run ideas by them, knowing that you weren't going to judge me.
Sure.
I would be like, okay, I'm going to say the wrong thing. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I'm fine putting my foot in my mouth in front of you or those other folks that were helping me.
Yeah.
And I trusted all of you enough to coach me to get it right.
Yeah.
You don't want to publicly make a mistake.
Yeah.
And anything is uncomfortable when it's new. It's just like a sport.
Yep.
You're not good at everything. You got to practice.
Yep.
And so what I can talk about eloquently now, I was very uncomfortable 5 years ago. But I did set out when the board hired me. They hired me as a chain agent. They told it was very clear. And I had a 5-year plan. And interestingly enough, I take the job in the summer of 2019. And then the summer of 2020, we know we all experienced that together. I was able to accelerate a 5-year plan in about 12 months.
Wow.
Because who's going to get in the way?
Yeah.
I thought I'd have to be
Yeah.
a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
The Band-Aid was ripped
Yeah.
off. We were changing. And what I was taught, what I've learned, I read. I had people, Demetrius suggested so many books. Might read this and people will take you seriously. Understanding the black sororities and fraternities. I didn't understand really what was going on there.
Yeah.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
You research.
Yeah.
But no tokenism. My goal was do things in threes because when you were there, you were alone. When you would step into a chairman's club, you were alone. You didn't see another black female.
Right.
By the way, I appreciate so much you mentioning females because I think it's hard to be a female leader in America and really the world.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the book Lean In, and I suggest to a lot of people to read it all the time. It's a great book on female leadership and the struggles for women. But trying to do it authentically, I think that's a term that you mentioned earlier, Tami. And I just got people together, and we built the team that we built. And you were both part of that. You were part of it. You were part of the solution. And I'm glad you're both here. I do want to. We're going to wrap things up, and I want to wrap it up with a question. You're dramatically younger than us, Tami, but you're still not maybe technically a young person anymore. I don't,
Look, I'm in the 40s and over.
You're not eligible for Gwinnett Young Professionals.
Right.
Let's just say
that.
Exactly. But let's hope there's some 20 and 30-year-olds listening to this podcast. Any advice for them it's a different time for them.
Yeah.
My kids are in their 20s. They grew up in diverse Gwinnett County.
Yeah.
It's a different paradigm for them than it is for us. But let's think about the 20 and 30-year-olds. Any advice for them before we close?
What I tell my kids all the time, and our kids were about the same age, and a lot of what I experienced, and granted, I didn't experience segregation, but on the other side of it, as a young man, I grew up around it in a small town of Conyers, Georgia, and then we eventually moved closer to the city. So I did have some experience of racism and things of that sort, but with my kids being future leaders, is the quote that I like to use with them quite often is plan your work and work your plan. And so it's almost like having a blueprint of how you want your life to look like, and then just follow that blueprint. And I think that is just a true recipe to success. And so that's probably what I would tell them, and I think that's easy for them or a young person to understand.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I think for me, every day I'm around young people, right? So the kids in my shelter, all teenagers, my own children, teenagers, and I think that I always think like, what did I need someone to tell me, right? When I was, let's say 17, 18 to like my late 20s. And I think never be afraid to be who you are, right? We're constantly going to be put in situations and in rooms that challenge us, that we feel alone, that we feel, and I think that you have to be your authentic self, but you also have to learn the room that you're in. right? So with me, I have tattoos and piercings, and that's one thing that is just not going to change about me. But I had to learn as a younger professional that I could still be me, but there was a way that I had to still dress so that I would be accepted and respected, right, as a professional. I think that I also tell all of the young people I work with, like, surround yourself with people that are better than you. Right? If everyone's right here, and let's just say, when we're young, we're all kind of at that level where we don't really know. If you surround yourself with that's what you'll be. If you are constantly surrounding yourself with people that challenge you to be better, even in your friendships, your business mentors, your business relationships, always surround yourself with people that inspire you and challenge you to be better, right? Because then you're going to be aligning yourself with that mission of whatever. If you say, I want to be this in 5 years, are you aligning yourself today to be in that position? And if you're not, realign, right? Like just realign, that's all. But we constantly have to self-regulate, and we have to keep checking ourselves. And I just think that the other thing is, it's okay if you have a plan and it changes, as long as you're still working a plan, right? Sometimes the mission may be the same, but the route may be different. It's no different to when you're driving, you get stuck in traffic, and the destination is the same, but Waze says, no, you actually need to go this way. As long as you're going in the right direction.
As long as you're moving.
It's okay if there are little setbacks. And I think you had mentioned, Nick, earlier, being okay to learn from your mistakes. That's sometimes the best way we learn, right? So I think I think we put a lot of pressure on our young people to have it all together and to know. And sometimes people get imposter syndrome where they're faking it. And it's like, no, it's okay to be like, I don't know. But if you're surrounding yourself with people that do, and you've got your mentors that say, hey, don't say that. Or maybe you should say it this way next time. And then the last thing I would say is relationships, right? Relationships are so important. If you build relationships, genuine relationships with people, you never know where that will play out in your future, where you say, down the line, you need a reference, and you're like, I was speaking to this one of my friends, and you may have years before not known how your paths were going to cross, but build relationships with people, be genuine, be authentic, and I just feel like life will play out the way that you truly want it to, but you just got to be willing to work that plan.
I think life's best lessons are when you make a mistake.
When you make a mistake.
Because those are the things that you'll remember.
Oh, yeah.
It's oftentimes you don't remember how you got to your level of success until you remember about the mistakes that you made along the way.
There's valleys. Yeah.
So, Lanier, you're saying you did not have it all figured out when you were in your 20s and 30s, and you made some mistakes and learned from it?
I did.
And you readjusted your plan?
Yes.
And you let the app have you go down a different road?
I didn't readjust my plan because this is all I've ever done, other than the year and a half when I left to get into the car business. But I knew as a kid, and I was that one kid who was always with his dad, and that's my mentor. I mean, that's my guy, that's my dude. And
by the way, I'm not surprised with that. We never talked. My dad too. I was his shadow.
I mean
mine
that's
too.
that's
Both
my
my parents. Those were my guides. Yeah.
It's interesting because he and I are so much alike. We constantly bump heads. But at the end of the day, he has been a mentor. He has taught me so much about life, about business, about respect.
Yeah.
And but I mean, we are the exact same.
That's awesome.
We're the exact same.
He might be a little bit cooler than you.
He might be.
He's very
You learn
cool.
from the best, right?
He's very cool. There's no doubt. Thank you both so much. Really appreciate you being with us today and sharing everything you've shared. This is going to air live in the future, which I believe is February 14th.
Awesome.
And that may actually, is there another, what else is on that day? February 14th.
I probably need to find myself to be in Miami.
In Miami.
With some roses.
With some roses,
For Dana.
Yeah.
Good idea. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you both.
Thank you.
And I appreciate both of your support, advice, and friendship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mutual. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on The Voice of Business, presented by Gwinnett Magazine. Our episodes are available to enjoy anytime on any of the podcast channels, including Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. You can also find all of our episodes on our website, gwinnettchamber.org. Don't forget to follow us on social @Gwinnett Chamber to see when our next episodes are out.